I'm going to be talking to Professor Stewart Prest, the political scientist at the University of British Columbia, about an essay that he published today that it's very interesting. And the title is Mark Carney's Apology to Donald Trump. Far from elbows up, it seems Canada has no elbows at all. Welcome to the interview, Stewart.
Good to be with you again, Marco.
This is so interesting, and because in part it reflects what some of my audience is saying. I mean, they're angry that Mark Carney apologized to Donald Trump because Ontario's Premier Doug Ford ran an ad, the infamous ad with, that featured Ronald Reagan talking about tariffs. And then our prime minister apologized to the president, even though he had nothing to do with it. Why are you angry? And what's the argument behind the anger?
So it's a good question. I mean, it's a series of questions here, so let's unpack them. I am angry and really frustrated that we see Canada's prime minister apologizing when nothing wrong was done. We apologize if we make a mistake that hurt somebody, that is thoughtless. We have somehow done wrong, and we acknowledge that we've done wrong. We're going to do better in future. Here's how. That's a good apology. I teach my 11, 13-year-olds that all the time. There was nothing wrong here. There's nothing to apologize for. So the article, the heart of the anger is drawing out the subtext of the apology. We are sorry. I, on behalf of Canada, am sorry that we offended you, Mr. President. We said things that are true, but are inconvenient for you to hear. And so we are sorry for that. Our political project should never get in the way of your feelings and your political interests. And when we are in a position where we're apologizing essentially for saying the truth, then we are in a very dark place. We are at once in a challenging situation in Canada. We need to think of ourselves as members of an international community, and we are negotiating trade agreements. We are also in a fight for the heart and the soul of the democratic world at this point. And the United States president does not believe in the truth in the sense of something that we can actually observe tangible in the world. We can be closer or further from. For him, truth is whatever gives him power in that moment. And if we buy into that definition of truth, we are lost.
We're going to get to the reasons why Mark Carney might have done this, because let's face it. I mean, Mark Carney has got to, if you read his book, Value, and I know you read his book, Values, it is one of the most moral economic treatises that I've ever read. I mean, that's what he argues for, is to bring morality to humanity, concern for others, empathy back into economics and into our economic policy. And that Mark Carney was not the guy who was apologizing to Donald Trump. So we're going to get to that, why he might have done this strategically. But the point I want to talk about now, Stewart, is the response from Americans. Because my social media feed is full of Americans saying, pointing the finger at Canadians, and we're going to invade you. Now is the time to invade you. And it's like Carney is the kid who gave the bully his lunch money. And now the bully's coming for tomorrow's lunch money and every lunch money every day after that. And there seems to be an argument here that we got to stop giving them the lunch money.
I think Canada continues to give concessions, and some of them are substantive. We're going to spend money where the United States wants us to spend, and some of them are rhetorical. We're going to agree to things that we don't think actually are true because we're trying to placate. We're trying to play nice with this mercurial, unpredictable, well, not that unpredictable president. Just he does things differently than other presidents. But every time we do that, we are just inviting further depredations. We're inviting further outrages. Just as you say, when you give the bully your lunch money today, they're coming back for it tomorrow because they now know a good thing when they see one. So they're going to continue to treat you like an ATM. When you do the bully's homework, if the bully says, you need to take care of this border is porous, I need you to take care of it, and you say, yes, we'll get on that right away. We'll take care of this border for you. Then they know they can continue to ask for more and more and more. Every country is responsible for their own defense. Every country is responsible for their own border security. So the moment Canada said, we will take care of your border for you for this problem that isn't even a problem, and certainly not one that we are responsible for, or is even real at the northern border. There is not a huge trafficking of fentanyl at the northern border in the United States. The fact that we acted like it was and we spent money as if there was, we validated that fantastical worldview. It's not real, but we acted as if it were real. We gave it reality. And so now that bully, that president can turn around and say, see, not only is this a problem, our friends to the north, because we'll be a friend for 5 minutes after that, they're doing something about it. Not enough, mind you. We're going to get them to do more, but they're finally taking this thing seriously that I have been saying they need to take seriously.
One of the things I mentioned before that, the folks in the MAGA universe are now out in full-throated cry, on social media demanding further concessions from Canada. We're going to invade Canada. That might not bother me if it was, Billy Joe Bob from, someplace out in Louisiana who was doing that. But we're starting to see within his circle that culture, his appointees and people who are high up in the MAGA world. And I'm thinking of Peter Hoekstra, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, who just seems to be going out of his way to insult us and rub our nose in it. And it's almost like he's taking, every night he talks to Trump on the big red phone and gets instructions how we can insult the Canadians the next day and keep this going. And that bothers me because this is not just him joking with Justin Trudeau about Canada becoming the 51st state. This seems a little more organized than that.
Yeah, we see this continual rationing effect, and every time we fail to draw a line and say, and not draw a line like we're going to attack or anything like that, but simply say this is inappropriate and we're not going to stand up for it. We're not going to go along with it. We're not going to give it credence with something like Ambassador Hoekstra. When we don't push back and say that's inappropriate, you're going to have to be put on notice for that. We're going to call you in to a meeting at Foreign Affairs and explain in no uncertain yet diplomatic terms that this is not conduct becoming of an ambassador. And if you continue to speak this way, you're going to lose your diplomatic credentials. That doesn't mean we're going to end our relationship with the United States, but we need to make it clear in diplomatic language that this is not how allies who respect one another talk to one another. And the reason why we so need to be on top of this issue is because we can see how on other fronts the United States is already going further with regard to a lack of regard for the rules that we thought were the rules of the game, the rules regarding the conduct of states towards other states, the conduct of the United States government towards marginalized populations. This is a US government that is sending troops regularly into places like Chicago, is sending in paramilitary forces in the form of ICE, putting tear gas in neighborhoods, and all kinds of indiscriminate violence towards Americans. They are involved in extrajudicial killings in the Caribbean, ostensibly targeting drug traffickers from Venezuela. There is no evidence that they are that. They could just be people in fishing boats. We have no evidence to know who is dying. It's a good chance that some people in fishing boats are dying for no good reason. And this United States government is not interested in making the case. They are interested in making the case that power is its own justification. And that should scare the hell out of Canadians.
Well, it scares the hell out of this Canadian, I have to tell you. And one of the reasons is, and this is for viewers, you can go onto our YouTube site channel, and you can find a playlist called Trump, Project 2025, and Canada. And the point of this, Stewart, is we've been talking to American experts. We're just getting this project ramped up. And it's based on an article that was written in Foreign Affairs by a couple of American academics who said that Trump is ungoverning. He's trying to deliberately break the machinery of the American state so that it can't govern. It can't do the things. And it comes out of Project 2025, which is like the playbook, the blueprint for this. And so the point here is the academics make a very, very good case. And then we're drawing parallels to Canada. What's it like in Alberta? Is Trump Is Danielle Smith with the UCP, the premier there, is she like Trump 1.0? I mean, there are uncanny parallels. And the point here is this is an assault on the state as we've conceived it since FDR and, the New Deal in 1933. And that's what worries me, is not just that he's, bullying Canada, but we've got our own MAGA folks who are kind of listening for the dog whistle. What do you make of that?
I do think when we have politicians who are so fast and loose with the truth, that is always a concern. When there doesn't seem to be any kind of correspondence between what they're saying and its connection with the truth, and that does seem to be something that is true of Danielle Smith, who says whatever is best to get her through that particular moment. And there is a clear affinity there towards relationships between the Alberta government and government in Washington, constant entreaties and a kind of provincial level diplomacy, trying to make the case that Alberta is part of that political project, not against it like the rest of those Canadians. So that kind of language is concerning. I think to this point, we have guardrails in Canadian democracy that are different, and in some ways they're better than that we see in a presidential system, where in a parliamentary system, government continues to govern only as long as they hold the confidence of the legislature, whether the House of Commons or the Legislative Assembly provincially. So there are lines of accountability there, and things can change change for the better very quickly. There is a line of accountability there. We have a judiciary that is not politicized in the way that we see in the United States. So there are operational guardrails in Canada that no longer operate in the United States. But even so, when we see politicians who are so interested in essentially joining the Trump train as opposed to building insulation against a non-democratic government, that is always going to be a cause for concern.
Well, let's talk about that, because I promised earlier we would talk about why Mark Carney might be doing this. And if I can play devil's advocate here for a moment, I could make the argument that Carney is a very canny guy, right? We've seen in the way he's massaged Trump's ego when he's, conducted himself in negotiations and discussions with him. So might there be a universe in which Mark Carney says, look, we need time. I need time to get my budget introduced. We need time to get projects underway. I just need to keep them off my back for a little while Canada embarks on this grand nation building exercise that I've been selling to the country for the past 7 or 8 months. And I'll take one, I'll grit my teeth and I'll take one for the team here because we need the time. How would you respond to that?
I think we can go even further and say that Carney is not only saying he's going to take one for the team, he's going to try to shift blame and say, actually, I didn't think this was worth saying, this was appropriate to say. It's Doug Ford who said this, and I told him he shouldn't say it, but here it's been said. So I want you to know that this relationship, we're still good, you and me, Donald. And so I'm sure there's a real temptation to try to maintain that good personal relationship. But when it comes at the cost of the truth, that's when we're into real problematic territory. Every time you give into a bully, you give a bully a sense that they can push you around to get what they want. They will continue to push you around. It's when they know that the push will lead to push back that bullies will think twice about it, and particularly when you are doing so with the support of others. Bullies tend to pick on the weak and the isolated, and so this is something else Canada really does need to do, find ways to stand with other countries. But the other piece, just to emphasize really quickly, is that that point about truth. We can't abandon the truth. That can't be one of the concessions that we give to reward Trump's ego, because we can't make arguments in support of ourselves if we can't have recourse to the facts.
This is a really good point, Stewart, and I'm glad you brought it up, because for a number of years now, we've been talking about living in the post-truth society, right? And we've had to deal with this at Energy Media. What is true? And, I say in my Twitter profile, my job is to tell the truth, full stop, as best I can. That's my job as a journalist. Not to be objective, not to both sides things. It's to look outside, tell you what I'm seeing, and tell it as truthfully and accurately as I can. And maybe what we need to do more of is thing exercises like you've done with this essay in the conversation, is to put truth telling and moral fortitude and integrity and ethical behavior back at the top of the list of political attributes that we want our government to have, from the prime minister on down. And we haven't been saying that enough. And maybe it's time we do, even if it hurts.
I think that sense of people not doing things because they hurt and being okay with that, it's an interesting way to phrase it. But another way to think about it is we are so used to talking about, say, politics as a horse race, that sense of, are people doing, is this going to work out for them? Is this in their interest to do so? The interest being the only thing that matters ultimately, and that everything else is secondary. We seem to be less and less committed to the idea that this is important for reasons beyond self-interest. This matters because of the kind of society we want to live in, the kind of world we want to be a part of. One of the ways to understand what we're seeing in places like the United States is that it is harder and harder for people to make those claims that in ways that bring everybody into the picture. And the United States is so divided, it's so exclusionary. It becomes much more about what's good for me or what's good for us and not you. Whereas we still need to think about our societies as a collectivity, and that there are shared values that encompass all of us. And we've really lost touch with that idea, I think. And so I don't know if there's any objective way to do that, but that sensibility of trying to understand what is the democratically appropriate thing to do is a question worth asking. Are we furthering the cause of democratic government by the people over the long term with this action, even if it's going to cost us in the short term?
Well, that raises another question, Stewart, is what can my viewers do? And now I can give you the obvious one, which is contact your member of parliament, maybe even
Right.
contact your member of the legislative assembly, and email or call. Those are great. I've been told that if you want your MP, write a letter. If you take the time to write a letter and put it in an envelope and get a stamp on it and go post it, they pay attention to that more than
Yeah.
they would an email, which is just kind of, you can blast that off. So folks, get in touch with your member of parliament and make the point. And this is not even just to complain about Mark Carney so much as, I think you put your finger on the essential question here, Stewart, which is that we need to be truth tellers, and we need the prime minister to be a truth teller, because that is one of the definitions of what we mean by Canada as a democratic country.
Yeah. I think I'll put a little caveat on it because I am an academic. We always have to be aware that we don't have full possession of the truth. It's always from our particular standpoint. So I'd encourage people to do exactly as you're saying, but also to be aware that there's always going to be more to the story, and always be continually curious, asking other questions, and I guess being exercising a certain kind of humility around this as well. The reason why I I draw the conclusions that I do is I've thought about issues from many different perspectives, but I'm always trying to think about, well, what have I missed? What else do I need to understand? And trying to understand how different worldviews come together. So I'm trying to understand how people who support a politician that I have difficulty understanding why they're doing what they're doing. Even more importantly is, why do other people support them? Trying to understand these things and trying to understand different perspectives, even as we continually stand up for what we think is right, based on the facts as we understand them from a critical perspective. That is what we can do. And I guess in a purely self-interested vein, sharing things like articles, the one I wrote, if you find that it resonates, finding ways to bring it into the attention of others, even people you disagree with, especially people you disagree with, just as a way to start conversation, not to start a flame war, to start conversations about which way this world is headed.
Even if we were to give Prime Minister Mark Carney the benefit of the doubt and assume smart guy, got the right values, had to make a tough compromise here because he felt that he had to, it never hurts to contact your elected officials and demand that they be truth tellers, that they stand up for what is right, for Canadian values. And even if you say, look, this isn't about Mark Carney, but we're drifting in a particular direction and we want it stopped. We, the people, want that stopped. We want to get back to telling the truth. That's not a bad thing. That we can't go wrong sending that email or writing that letter.
Yeah. And doing so, you can also acknowledge that this is a challenging situation. No one, I think, will deny that it's an uncomfortable situation Mark Carney finds himself in, having to deal with this power imbalance, trying to speak the truth to somebody with 10 times the power. The United States has an economy 10 times the size of ours. That we can't forget about that. And so finding ways to diplomatically but unmistakably stand up for the things that are right and appropriate, even while navigating the realities that is not an easy task for anyone. So giving the benefit of the doubt where it's appropriate to do so, but it can't come at the expense of actually asserting what is right, and so that's an important thing. Reagan really did like free trade. Canada and the United States really did benefit from an extensive free trade relationship. Those things are facts, and they're facts that are actually to the advantage of both Canada and the United States. And so finding creative ways to make that point clear and not apologize for that reality, that's a difficult challenge, but that's why Mark Carney gets paid the medium-sized bucks, as it were. They're not corporate dollars, but it's not nothing either.
Stewart, I thank you very much for this. Folks, this is an important conversation. I hope you have it with your friends, your family, your social networks, because we clearly need to rally ourselves in a very difficult time. Stewart, thank you for the interview.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Marco. Glad you're talking about these things.